All right. Well, thanks so much for being here and joining us for this conversation about just how teens in particular are being influenced and affected by this moment in time. We know that the pandemic and the quarantine is not a fun moment for anybody, but especially teens, I think, are facing some unique challenges in just the way that their lives have been upended in some big ways. So I think this is going to be a really interesting conversation, and I think we'll have some good stuff to share as we go through this conversation tonight. So I invited Brandy and Samuel Knopp and Jason and Nicole Skaggs, who are two leaders for us at Southeast in our foster care and adoption ministry, and have teams of their own to kind of help lead this conversation because they're going through it. And so they're going to do that tonight. So I think Samuel and Brandy are going to kind of kick it off, introduce themselves, and then we'll let the Skaggs introduce themselves and kind of get us going, get the conversation started tonight. So Samuel and Brandy, you guys want to get that started?
Yep, absolutely. Thanks, Blaine. So we are Samuel and Brandy Knopp. We have 6 kids in the home. The older 4 are bio kids. They're 10, 13, 15, and 16. And then we have a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old who were adopted through private domestic adoption. So we homeschool our kids. So the changes with the pandemic, we were already all at home. But that has brought some unique challenges. So Jason, if you want to introduce yourselves.
Sure. Jason and Nicole Skaggs. We're in New Albany, Indiana, and we have one daughter, Mackenzie, who's a high school junior, and she came to us as a foster child, and that was about 6 years ago. I think we got her around 6th grade. She's a junior now. Great girl. We can share some of what we've been through and maybe use it as a case study and discussion guide. The Knopps and I and Nicole are by no means professionals. And so we want to make that disclaimer up front. And the advice we offer is learned through the School of Hard Knocks and maybe some of the mistakes we've made. And luckily, we've got 4 weeks of perspective on this pandemic, at least from our side, that we can reflect on some of the things we've done, some of the things we wish we could go back and redo, and just maybe put some vulnerability out there about what we've experienced. So if everybody's okay, we can pray and then get started. You guys okay with that? All right. Father, your word says that where 2 or more are gathered, you are there. And God, we are gathered in an uncommon way, but we know that you are with us. We pray that you would bless this time, that you would guide our conversation, open our hearts to learn, to be teachable. Please bless these children that you have put us in charge of and has given us over as stewards. And we pray, God, that you would lead them in their lives and that the plans you have for them would come to fruition. And Lord, that we would be just implements to your will and not an obstacle that you got to overcome. Bless this conversation now. Let us honor you with our words, our actions, and our attitudes. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. Okay. So guys, let me tell you a little bit about Mackenzie, and I think that'll help you understand a little bit about how the quarantine has really hit us. So she is a high school junior. She is very active socially. So she is like one of the social hubs in her group, not just her school group, but her church group, her work group. Everywhere that she's involved, she's sort of the kingpin on who's going to do what and when they're going to get together. She's not just active socially. She has a boyfriend. She is active in youth group at church, and she's also an MSM leader. So she's got a group of middle school girls that she's very connected with. Gymnastics instructor, and just basically on the go all the time. She started driving a little over a year ago, And I don't know that the car has been parked for longer than 20 minutes at a time. She's just always on the go. And so for us, when this began about 5 or 6 weeks ago, it first started as a rumor, something that could be here, and we had to start having discussions before things were really bad, right? And I think why that's important is for the teens especially, this has come at them in waves. Meaning at first it's, something might impact my spring break trip. Oh, wait, maybe school's going to be impacted. Oh, wait, school's canceled. Oh, wait, my sports leagues have been canceled. It's piling on, loss after loss after loss. And it's hard to deal with that. And especially for our younger kids, especially Mackenzie, who's been through 5 foster homes and has experienced a lot of loss in her life, this feels like a recurring theme. This is, to her, I think it feels like, here we go again. And that loss is not something that she may have a lot of experience succeeding in. I mean, we think, or at least I think, let me put it that way, that, oh, you've been through loss before and you've shown yourself resilient and you've persevered, you can do this. But when you've been through painful circumstances and then another loss is coming at you, that's not encouragement. You don't want to go through that again. And you just have this feeling that maybe this is the way it's going to be forever, like a doom feeling, And I don't know that we had that perspective early on. I didn't, because when this happened, it really hit us at about the second week in March when we had to cancel our vacation. And this was the vacation that we've been planning since well before Christmas. It was our Christmas gift to each other. This was going to be our time to really bond as a family. We were going on a cruise, a week-long cruise in the Caribbean over spring break. And we planned it to the nth degree.
Yeah.
It's been a lot of time booking excursions, and we were bringing one of her friends with us. And all the time leading up to that cruise, Mackenzie would say, we're still going on a cruise. And we would say, look, this pandemic is breaking out. We might have to reschedule. And she just wouldn't hear it. And at first it was cute, but then it became not so cute because you could tell she really didn't want that loss, right? And then finally she accepted that. And we had to cancel the trip. And then our spring break started. And then everything in the country pretty much got canceled. And then we went on a full lockdown. And so that means all of her friends can't come over. She can't go see her friends. That means her job is no longer a place she can go. That means her youth group is no longer meeting. And this life that she had built just crumbled. And she didn't take it well at all. She really had a very emotional, dramatic reaction to it. And it left us a little stunned and afraid. Because to us, it's like, we don't have it as hard as so many people. No one is losing their job in our house. No one's in the hospital in our house. Things are not as bad as the rest of the people are dealing with. But to her, it was devastating. And then it became anger. And it became anger at us. Directed at us in this fashion of, my friends aren't in lockdown, and I don't think I have to be in lockdown. This is not like her. She is not defiant, but now she's in this stage of openly defiant with us, and that created a lot of stress and anxiety for us, right? I mean, because now we are losing our control, both inside and outside the house. Now we are we're feeling anxiety inside and outside. And there's something about this truth that she's an adult and, it's hard to control, and we're no longer calling the shots. We have to negotiate at this point. And the long story short, what we've realized weeks later, after we've prayed and together gotten through this is she was going through the stages of grief. And we wouldn't have characterized this as grief, but it's grief, and it's the natural reaction to loss. We should have expected, I should have expected it. I was the one given the toughen up buttercup speech and talking about, generations before people her age were going to war and come on, you've got to be tough. Not realizing that those stages she was going through are normal and actually healing. And man, if I would have been on point, I could have helped her through that, right? And I think Nicole realized a lot sooner than I did what was happening, and then we were able to adapt and pray and guide her through how to get through the grieving process. And what some of the things we've learned is, there's opportunities in this. There's silver linings. So we were going on a cruise to have a lot more common together time, right? Well, guess what? We got plenty of together time. One of the things we talked about doing on the cruise was like taking watercolor classes. Well, we can still do that. We've been able to connect really well during this time. And as an adoptive parent, that's the number one goal. I mean, over discipline, over relationship, we've been able to strengthen our connection, even to the point that she realized it. We were praying last Saturday, and we were going through this prayer guide, and it said, pray a prayer of thanks for something that you've learned through this time. And she said, I'm thankful because we've gotten so much closer through it. So it's, I guess the lesson we learn is that these young people, even though their loss is not as major as a lot of folks are having to endure right now, it's still big, and it's big to them, and it lives in a little body that has to already deal with a lot of loss. And we can best help them grieve that loss, recognize it, validate it, acknowledge that it's important, and then help them see what some of the good things that are coming out of this pandemic are. And it's helped unite us, which is so great, because in the case of Mackenzie, we don't have a lot of commonality. I mean, we're not blood. We don't have the same heritage or ethnicity. We're different. We don't even have the same name. She kept her name, and that's great. But what we do have is a common value system, inspired by our faith. And now we've got this opportunity to live out that faith and to say, what's important to us? Human life. That's important. So yeah, your friends may be out violating the stay-at-home order, but we're not, because that's who we as a family are, and we believe in sacrificing for others because that's who we are as a family. And that's helped to sort of be that bond to bring us together. So I think we've covered a lot of it. And I don't know, Randy and Sam, if you guys want to jump in there with anything.
I think one of the things that just really struck me when all of the cancellations and all of the just the immediate impact to each of our individual families started coming down the pike, right? First, it's this faraway fear, but then real changes started impacting each of our families. And a verse came to mind at that point, and it's from Proverbs 12, and it says, "Hope deferred makes the heart sick, but when it comes, it is a tree of life." And just it's processing and having to sort through where they've had all these hopes and they've had all these expectations, and all of those, so many of them, if not every hope that they've personally had in this season is now deferred, and it is now put off. It is now canceled, and maybe will never happen, right? And so that we find, as we've been talking, that's hard for us,
Right.
right? Like this is we have hopes, we have plans, we have things that we've had to let go of that may or may not involve our children, right? And we have a hard enough time processing those things as adults who are in theoretically better mental emotional positions than our teenage kids, right? And then, so then if we're having a hard enough time thinking through and processing all of these changes, what's going on in the hearts and the minds of our teens? And then you add on top of that any foster or adoption trauma, you add and all of the different dynamics that come just with that dynamic at all, right? Like that's its own entity. And then you're adding on top of it even more trauma, right? Because for them, this is another kind of trauma, right? And then you add in all their hormones, right? And you add in all of their very normal, natural, growing up, sorting out their own life responses. And it's just nutty, right? It just gets nutty. And so, I mean, just one of the things that Samuel and I have been talking about is how critical it is that we separate our process from their process, because we can't include our process with them. They need to be knowledgeable of what's going on, but our emotional response cannot interfere, cannot be part of their process as well, because then we're just going to be responding to them out of our own brokenness and our own processing, and that's not going to be able to meet the heart need that they have. And so for us, just thinking through, hope is deferred, right? Like we have deferred hopes, they have deferred hopes. And just like Jason was saying, like it's very much a loss. It's very much a grieving process. All of these things that they put so much anticipation and excitement in and found so much identity in. I mean, when you think about how much friends fuel and social interactions fuel teens, right? Even if they're not the social butterfly that Mackenzie is, right? Like they find social interaction in some way, right? Whether, I mean, and it looks very different for lots of different people, but that has been interfered with, right? And so when there's that interference, they've got to sort that out, right? Unfortunately, we're 4 weeks in now. And so hopefully we're over some of the critical bump of that. But you may not be, depending on the nature of your child and the nature of how they are in processing and sorting things out. Did you have something you wanted to say?
Let me ask a question just to you guys, and for those of you that just joined us, we're going to do kind of a live Q&A here in just a couple minutes. But I just want to throw out one question I'm kind of thinking is just, how have some of those conversations gone? Jason, Nicole, you kind of alluded to it a little bit that like some of the conversation has gotten a little bit better at times, like you've seen some progress. So can you talk a little bit about maybe what some of those first conversations look like, the challenges, and maybe where you've seen some of them get better, or even the NOPS to you guys as well, of just the kids kind of understanding a little bit maybe more of what's going on, and what have been some things that you found that kind of gotten them to come around and feel like a little bit okay with what's going on?
I think our first conversations were not real conversations. They were almost like screaming matches. I mean, and it wasn't always terrible, but it was a battle of wills. And Mackenzie's strong-willed, which has served her well, going through 5 different foster homes. but that can be a barrier to us connecting and to us communicating and getting the compliance we need. But how did it change? I think Nicole, the day that she said, yeah, it is important that you're not getting to go to prom, I see that that's a huge loss. And you're right.
Yeah, and loss is really familiar to these kids. And even though it's loss of a prom, it still feels like loss of safety, loss of security. It reminds them of things that are just embedded in them, even embedded in their body. So their reaction, of course, is going to be fear and a little bit of anger. And once we put on our private investigator hat, which we try to do a lot, we forget a lot of times too, but once we put that on and really started investigating what was going on, it gave us so much more empathy. You know, empathy is so important here because we weren't acknowledging feelings at first. We were just sort of fighting them. But when you've got that empathy and when you're sort of understanding where somebody's coming from and acknowledging them, that helps a ton. And I think that's what sort of turned the corner for us, is finally figuring out, finally allowing ourselves to do some investigation and figuring out what was behind all those behaviors.
Yeah, validating their loss. And really, Nicole's the one who came to that realization, because I wanted to diminish their loss. In my mind, I was cheering them up. Hey, it's not that big a deal. It's not that big a deal. It's just, you know, she's a junior. You've got senior prom next year.
Mm-hmm.
So to reach her and to connect with her, it was important to validate, yes, this is big and we're sorry.
And you know, it's hard too because we're not blood. And so there's a lot of things are different. She processes things differently based on her. We got her when she was 11 years old. So she's had a lot of life before us. So she processes things differently and thinks of things differently. Jason and I are sort of okay with being at home. You know, we're just okay with that. And if we had a biological kid, they probably would be that way too. But so it's the understanding of our differences and being empathetic about how she's feeling and the acknowledgement that helped us a lot.
I know for us, we had I'm really curious what it's going to be like when I have a girl who's 16 versus a boy who's 16. I think I will prefer boy at 16 than girl at 16. But my stories right now are specifically about soccer seasons were canceled. Going back and forth of, am I going to get to play? Am I not going to get to play? Maybe I'll get to, but the season will be shorter. Right. And so there was this juggling. And so there was constant conversation about it, which was hard on me because I was like, stop asking me. I don't know, right? Give me some space. And their life is, of course, this is the most important thing to them. So that produced a lot of exciting conversations, right? Where your voice is not exactly what you want it to be. And then their voice is not what you want their voice to be. So then you're calling out their attitude and so then it just escalates because you need to go blow off steam, which really is code for get out of my face so that I can calm down, right? So it's like, it's everybody all mixed in together. That was very transparent, guys. But it's just, that's just how it goes. You have all of these emotions that just keep escalating. And then I have another kid who retreats, right? And I won't see that kid for hours, right? And that kid's just off playing, doing his own thing and not communicating with me. And I have to go find him and say, what are you thinking about? And even then he can't tell me what he's thinking about. And these are bio kids that don't have so then when your teenage sons are crying, like that's always exciting, right? And so it's gotten better since then because you keep talking and you keep peeling away the layers and you keep explaining, you keep walking that relationship out. And then really smart. And they have to sort it all through and figure it out in their own time and in their own way.
Okay, Brandy, you keep freezing up on us, so I hope you can hear me.
But your face is in like the perfect.
Your face keeps freezing in a smile, which is just awesome. We definitely got a lot of the story though, and I think it was really powerful.
Okay.
That sense of just the kids just constantly trying to figure out how life is going to change, which I think is powerful. I want to share. This is just a great. I love this. I got to talk to one of my good friends, Ryan North, who does a lot of trauma training in Texas. I got to have a conversation with him last night. We're actually going to put it out on Facebook next week, and I was interviewing him last night. He put up a comment on Facebook a couple of days ago that I think just fits exactly what you guys are saying. That waking up afraid and feeling powerless to change your situation is how some of our kids feel every day. I hope this global trauma will result in increased empathy and compassion for our kids. That like what we're feeling, I think what you guys were talking about with Jason, Nicole, and Samuel, Brandy, like what we're feeling as adults and as parents is what our kids feel a lot of the time, that they don't have full control over their lives and they don't get to do what they want to do. And we say no to them about everything, even though we know we don't. And that's like just how they feel, that everything is a no and they don't have the full power and control of all those kind of things. And so, yeah, I mean, it's just, that has to at least for us kind of go, if this is hard enough on me, like if I feel the stress and anxiety of this, and I mean, really 4 weeks into this thing and being restricted to your home and being fearful and afraid, like we're all experiencing some trauma and some toxic stress, which those of us in the foster and adoption community should know a little bit about what that does to the brain and the body and all those kind of things. And so like, it's a breeding ground for conflict. And for us all to be a little bit on edge and to be a little bit fearful. So, man, I think, as you can process it, as you can recognize that in yourself, come back into the situation as like a little bit more calm and a little bit more ready to engage. And I think, Nicole, man, that was such the right move to say, I see your pain and hurt, and I accept that it is like that's loss and that's grief, and that becomes a way into that conversation. Katie shared a question over here, which I think is really good. So I'll ask this as kind of the next question, and then we'll kind of pause. We'll stop the recording and kind of go into a little live Q&A, but I think this is a great question. So have you guys had any struggle beyond kind of the early conversations around loss, more really like establishing a routine and keeping kids motivated to do that schoolwork at home or do the online learning or just even exercise or take a shower is in her question, which I think for some of them is probably important. So, just like when kids are like, well, I don't have to go to school today. I feel that like, so just what has that been like in your families of just kind of how you're navigating that with the kids?
We've been walking a lot in our neighborhood, and at this point, I pretty much have every single house memorized. I mean, I know the flowers that are in the front yard. I know what the mailbox looks like. So we created a scavenger hunt based on all those things, and had her go out and take pictures of all the stuff in the neighborhood on the scavenger hunt, which kept us kind of active for a little bit. And we've been riding bikes and doing stuff like that a lot outside.
Getting the routine is hard too, because we had spring break in the middle of this.
Yeah.
And in Floyd County, Indiana, that's a 2-week spring break.
Yeah.
And so they actually started the lockdown after spring break, created all kinds of problems for kids to try to figure out what e-learning was going to look like when school did start. And I don't know how we got through it. It was a rough start to that week. The rough start to say, okay, bedtime is back in play, even though you're a junior in high school, that you got to go to bed. And this is when your phone's got to be put back up. it felt like all rules were suspended during that chaos of when it first started, and then we had to reinstitute them, and it didn't happen overnight. And I think one of the things I would say I've learned is, especially when we're all on this high anxiety, is to give a little grace.
Yeah.
And we've given more than typical, because it's not, the routine is there to help us. We're not there to help the routine. So where the routine helps keep us aligned and doing productive things, that's great. But if there is a night where we're having a great conversation, we're not going to say, oh, we're going to bed now. We're going to let her stay up for 30 extra minutes. Or if she's got a sibling group that doesn't live with us, and if she's having a great FaceTime with them and it's time for the phone to be put up, we're going to extend that, because we feel like we got to give her a little more grace during this time, just so we can all get through this together.
Yeah.
I'll comment on it real quick. In our household, we don't have the foster kids right now, but our kids are this exact age. So, and my husband and I are both working. And so it's sort of like, we're just hoping for the best, because I moved my hours to the 12 to 8 range so that I could help with the schooling in the morning. And then sort of the kids are you just pray they don't burn the house down. Then my husband picks it up around 5. And so there's a lot of challenge. And I think the whole thing about trying to do routine out the door, because we're actually having to do meetings and conversations, and, oh, they just ate all the chips, and, oh, you know what, I'm just going to have to let it go, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then I can't speak for all, but I can tell you that on the boys' side of this, mine are both boys, this question about the whole hygiene, that is crazy. That just not even what they're normally like. I'm like, what are you doing? And then they'll argue with me about whether or not they really smell. Like, trust me, you really smell. So anyway, it's rough because both of us are working and trying to figure it all out. And I'm actually going to work a couple of days a week. So anyway, I feel you. I get it.
That's rough.
Yeah, I think the only thing, and so, I'm working from home as well, and I'll hear comments from my coworkers. Yeah, I rolled out of bed 10 minutes ago before this meeting and whatnot, and I'm still in my pajamas or whatever. But I've just tried for myself to keep a normal routine, and our kids are pretty compliant, But so I model, I example, as if I was going to work. I'm getting up, getting a shower, doing my normal thing for myself and with them, kind of, and so they have kind of just followed along. So, I mean, not every child's going to be like that, obviously. And, but I do think that, again, to some of what Brandy has said and what others have said, that, when we can kind of separate ourselves from their process and kind of, figure out how we need to relate, and then kind of deal with our own stuff, but so that we can engage better with them, I think it just enables them to follow along a little bit better.
I like it. I think it's good. Hey, we're gonna take a few live questions here with the folks that are here on the Zoom call for us. If you're watching this after the fact, because we're gonna post this on Facebook for others to enjoy and participate, please post some questions in the comments. I know Jason, Nicole, Samuel, and Brandy, all of us would love to follow up with you and help in any way that we can. And so we are so glad that you're taking the time to check this video out tonight.